It's still irritating this morning, isn't it? I think it's, before we start, it's best to explain exactly what's going to happen. So firstly, thanks to Aston University School for hosting us this morning. In a moment, we'll go around the table. So we can even get to. Yeah.
Just so you know, if you are not aware, come out the door here and go left and sort of follow through. There's the ladies and gents on the right hand side and the so that's where they are. We're not expecting any fire alarms or anything like that at all. So if there is, then basically follow me. We'll be going out to the main entrance and we won't be using the lift.
Right. All 6 floors.
Yeah.
It's
I was going to say it's going down, and it's better that than kind of lift stop between floors 3 and 4 and the smoke, you know. So but we're not expecting anything at all. Just say that the license is down there and on the right.
Okay. Right. So thank you for that. So let me explain it's going to work. So at the moment, we'll just go around, introduce ourselves, name, rank, serial number. No presentations, no PowerPoints, no marketing, not interested. We'll then get down to the conversation. Okay. This is very much an open debate. So it's not an Oxbridge conversation, despite all people milling outside in their gowns. You don't have to put your hand up and say point of order or may I interject. You dive straight in. My job is just to keep the conversation rolling, keep it roughly on track. I will be recording this, and there's also a little canvas here. Don't worry about that, okay? Best assume what you say is on record. However, if you say anything you wish to be off record, just say, can we keep this between ourselves for a moment? Imagine the tape has magically stopped. Okay, so fine like that. Similarly, if you get back to the office and think, that was a little indelicate, I could express that a little bit more better. God, I'll get sacked if that gets out. Quick telephone call or email with say with the next 48 hours, it will magically vanish. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is nobody's trying to catch you out. You are free to speak. You are amongst friends. He's sick of this joke, but please treat this man with contempt and disdain. He's a photographer. Why does the photographers hate each other? The more you ignore Jess, the better the photographs will turn out. Okay, so completely ignore him as a clap fix away. I do have a policy at the side of no bookings in my company. Okay. We only keep the most beautiful shots of yourself. The more you ignore them, the most beautiful are. Or the unpleasant ones to destroy, apart from the really unflattering ones which we keep for the Christmas draw. But you will never know about that, and that's already been one. That is enough prattling from me, so let's introduce ourselves very quickly. Name, rank, serial number.
Harry Shepherd, I'm the Energy and Sustainability Manager for Delta Energy.
I'm Amy. I'm the Product Manager for Energy at Blue City.
Hello, my name is Ryan Bennett. I'm the Managing Director and owner of the business called Solar Ceramics.
I'm Martin Grant. I'm Programme Manager for the Business Energy Advisory Service Delivery Programme.
I'm Wayne Carter. I'm the Managing Director from Fabwell Steel Products. We manufacture access covers and structural steel supports.
I am David Roberts. I'm Chairman of EdTech Group, a diverse industry group.
Nigel Waldron, Managing Director of Power Minerals, that look after waste from power stations.
Dan Hancock's Corporate Sustainability and Development Director for Russell Rooftops.
I'm Skidmore, Sales and Technical Director for Power Minerals.
Okay, Doug. There's a magical app called Otter, which beautifully transcribes as we carry on. So, for the sake of just getting the conversation going, I'm picking on him because we have met in the past, but we can't quite remember where. And let's start with Wayne, which is, I won't I should say what I want to is I want to be open about the issues that face adopting sustainability policies, but I don't want this to be a group therapy session. Okay, so I think we need to look at to be honest about the challenges coming forward, but be positive. So we'll start with you, Wayne, is from your viewpoint, I mean, how transformational can adopting sustainable business practices be? I mean, rather than just also lumping it on to the business, how do you actually embed it and how do you get show positive results from it?
Okay, well, sustainability is a big word and it covers a whole plethora of things. So, when we talk about sustainability, I think about a sustainable workforce is one thing that gets overlooked in this whole conversation about sustainability. But talking specifically about barriers and obstacles, obviously the main thing is it's got to make financial sense. It's all good to have the right, the right aspirations for the environment and doing the right thing, and that's where the conversation starts. But you've got to look at removing those obstacles, which is cost. So first thing I've done when I talk about sustainability and introduce things to businesses, I work with my finance manager. So we build a case for the sustainability to be added value back into the business. So you've got your obvious things, your obvious investments where you can look at ROI from buying a kind of fixed asset or something like that that's going to help. But some of the bigger things where the most sustainable benefits come from is actual from the design process, which is often overlooked. So when we talk about embedding and get people to buy in, when staff see that actually what you're trying to do about sustainability, so reducing carbon, reducing the amount of materials and all these kind of things, when you're looking at actually making the designs of your products better and removing materials, trying to do things in a more sustainable way, that directly adds back to your bottom line. So that's
I can see you starting enthusiastically there.
No, I do come across this quite a lot in what I do. So I've just set up like a net zero division of our company, and we work with a lot of manufacturers that have exactly the same issues as you, and it's around funding. A lot of people, the moment you speak of sustainability, you get, oh, what's going to cost me? So there's a lot of objections I think that you need to overcome. But then when you're also talking about product design, that's key. It's looking at the minerals and stuff that you use, especially if you're working like in an aerospace or defence industry, with minerals and rare earth minerals that you're using. Are there any ways that you can innovate and make your product better, but without being quite so harsh on the environment? That also then gives you that competitive edge, I think, and the opportunity. And then I don't think a lot of companies really shout about their sustainability initiatives that they've got going on either. And I think that's another key thing.
The other key thing is resilience, because one of the things that we've implemented in our factory is that we wanted to grow the business. We wanted to do it in a sustainable way. So we were having a problem with procuring nitrogen, which is the inert gas we use for our laser cutting operations. We use a lot of it, and costs of that when the energy prices went up, they rocketed. And so not only was the cost of the nitrogen very expensive, but we were getting disruptions to our supply chain because they were running low, we're having to make phone calls and having to stop production. So in generating the nitrogen on site, we saved a fortune. But also from doing that, we've been able to increase our machine so that it consumes more nitrogen because a bigger machine has enabled us to grow. But we're using PV, so we're using a joined up system. So we're using PV to run something that's energy intensive from available power. And then we're connecting all of that in a circular way by looking at generating nitrogen over the weekends, for example, when we've got surplus PV. So I think it's looking at that joined up approach. So what's the reason? Well, the first thing is we want to be resilient. We don't want to be reliant on our supply chain for these things. We don't want to put a 20,000 litre nitrogen tank in our factory that we haven't got space for. So what other ways can we go about doing that? So
Amy, good to you, because I put this politely. You work in a sector just famous for burning fuel, as it were. Basically, you might as well throw £5 notes onto a fire. But what's driving the ceramics industry? I take it these days absolutely top of the agenda just because of the sheer cost of what they do.
Yeah, the cost of energy in the ceramic sector. at least we've got a range of different kilns. So we've got kilns that can run on up to 100% hydrogen. We've got electric kilns. And that allows people, both ourselves and customers, to come and test out new processes or more less energy intensive processes or alternative energy sources. Try and produce those ceramics or advanced ceramics components that go into a whole range of industries. So it could be healthcare in a hip replacement, or it could be something from an aerospace application, or any of those applications. They all need ceramics, and ceramics are crucial. So to reduce the energy or change the energy initial supply is something.
That's even a minor reduction can have a huge payback. Isn't it?
Yeah, because some of the advanced ceramics, some of our processes, our kilns can go up to 3,000 degrees C, which is a really high temperature, takes a lot of energy. But to produce materials that can cope with those harsh environments, we need that process energy.
So you're nodding along through the table. I mean, how does it feel? Because you're the manager, you're the boss, and you can actually say, you John on Picard bits and say, make it so. But how do you actually sell the, the idea of sustainability not being a cost but being a benefit to stakeholders?
To the stakeholders, yeah. So it's a real issue, isn't it? We've got two of the biggest foundries in the UK, aluminium. So we've got 5 furnaces that are gas powered, got biggest machine shop in the Midlands with 150 CNCs. So when we had the energy spike 24 years ago, that was a 6 million hit at the end of 1 year. So that was a big old number to deal with. And aluminium's an interesting metal in many ways from a recyclability point of view. JLR's cars were all built on aluminium structures. So what we have done, we developed our own, working with a tech company called Urban Chain, we've developed our own private energy market. So I set a mandate that I wanted everything to be green, kind of ambitious from an energy perspective, but let's go green on all our energy. Let's make it sustainable, and the sustainability and the cost brings everything into a really long PPA, for the energy. Let's go. We went 3/4 fixed for 15 years just to get a bit of resilience and price into the deal, and then with cost reduction. And then we really pushed hard on solar on all our installations for after the meter. So we get that benefit of after the meter energy cost direct on the private wire. What does all that mean? It probably means our energy bills come down by about 4 million quid a year, which is a big benefit to stakeholders. Still struggling, by the way, generally in this market because it's a really challenging market. We will have all green energy source from the summer of next year. We funded our own solar farm in Bristol, which is also linked to the private energy market we've developed. And we're building as much solar as we can on every facility we've got. And the payback on that's interesting. One of our Coventry facilities, payback was 18 months. It was like December, so it's a day shift, no night shift, no weekend working. We sell a little bit back to the grid at the weekends, not much when they're. And then on the foundries, it'll only be about 10% of the total energy usage a year, but it's 8p.
Yeah,
that's gold dust to us 8p, only even 10% of our energy now. So the way we went about it, rightly or wrongly, the board set a mandate of what it wanted. It's a big ambitious terms, cascaded that down to the teams, and then we've just driven it really.
Business now, because you say you're integrated rather than sort of tacking sustainability on, as it were, bit here, bit there. You've done what Wayne's been doing and really integrated it into the very foundation of the business.
It's part of our DNA, absolutely. Yeah. And it's got, I think, Kurt, it's got to be because for me, and I would say this from the guy, but I think unless it comes from the top and it's really meant and it's really passionate about it, you're in danger of greenwashing, you're in danger of just doing bits, you're in danger of playing to your audience. And I think, so when we recruit people, bring people into the sort of leadership teams, a lot of our onboarding is all about the values you are and what you want to be. We're really keen on making sure it's almost groupthink in a way, which could be against us, but we kind of want like-minded people with like-minded values. So that's how we went about our approach to it all. Will it work? That's the exciting bit, isn't it? We're going to find out in the next 5 years, see in 5 years, see what the answer is. But there's no reason why it shouldn't be successful. And despite all the social media stuff going on around EV, energy and so on and so forth, and drill baby drill, long term, it's got to be right. It's just got to be right.
Well, actually, how do you actually brought in sustainability policies? And as sort of look, this is going to be a benefit. It's not just so it's a marketing technique.
I agree. It has to be led from the top. I dare say, unfortunately, that's probably a bit unfair. But when you're dealing with an Eastern European country that's don't necessarily hold the same sustainability policies that you do in the UK, their main policies, bottom line, you really are pushing snowballs uphill at the time. We have introduced sustainability policies and are just on the technical side with that. But it's also very difficult because our main base is at Drax Power Station, sort of anti-Christ, aren't they? Sustainability. And to be fair, they are really doing their best. He keeps on telling me off for that. I've got to be honest and straight. When anybody mentions Drax, you go, shit. But
carry a gag around.
So yeah, we have introduced. I mean, it's got to be led by the top. I don't think it necessarily is. To the credit, Drax do try, and the amount of investment that we've done on their legacy stockpile, which is massive, got 2 really big legacy ash stockpiles, and we managed to sort of bring that into play with the sustainability factor, particularly into the main market, which was selling to, which is another whole different cement industry because they are the biggest emitters possibly. So we really are. It's challenging, isn't it? Really?
I was going to ask, are your customers asking you
Yes.
about the products and what embodied energy is in this aluminium component? You know, so it's that part of the customers driving.
That's definitely part of the drive. 5 years ago, I started a bit of a campaign in Jaguar Land Rover, the concept of recycled aluminium. You know, and I was the devil incarnate, but should that be wanting virgin aluminium?
Yeah.
We're now around about 38%.
Yeah.
Of the melt is recycled aluminium.
Yeah.
But obviously keep pushing it every year. So I think will the day come where we do 100% recyclability? I doubt it. But we're kind of moving on an upward trend for recyclability.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, all know it, I'm sure, but there's enough aluminium in this world now, we don't need it anymore.
I think so customers would have said, "Oh, you bringing me a waste, and it's something that's a bit of an issue there, or a recycled product, and they expect it much cheaper, and you know."
And there's an element of greenwashing, I think, in that statement, because they preach it, but they don't necessarily want to practice it. So that's part of this cost drive.
I think about reframing, like reframing what you're doing, saying just because you're recycling something doesn't mean it's like a bad thing. You have to say, you know, it's a good thing. You're using less minerals. We don't need any more, etc.
I think the key is if you turn around to a customer and say, "Well, we've got a sustainability policy, we're doing this, we're doing that," and they'll say, "Yes, we can get our products cheaper from someone else that isn't," what will they do? Yeah, that's about you've got really.
Big up the money.
Yeah, there's a difference between having a policy and then, you mentioned the bolt on. Well, yeah, we've bolted on a policy. Why? Because our customer, we've got to go onto this portal, upload all of our policies. It dictates that you've got to have. So obviously you have a free card trick with the management systems and cover health and safety, environment, quality. It's all important stuff, and you've got to do that right. So our way to run the business.
You're talking
But
about
then-
things like EcoVadis, B Corp.
Yeah, there's always, have you got all of these other things? And you said, well, but we've got a policy, so, you know, because otherwise you can start chasing your tail with a whole lot of policies and paperwork.
We definitely see that so we manufacture concrete products primarily to house builders
You are saying.
Has been. But we see, kind of in contrast to some of yours, because we're not quite as energy intensive, but you mentioned about your customers asking for it. And yes, we get asked all the time from all the house builders about EPDs in particular, cement being our biggest raw material. That's a huge thing for us. Most of our energy and carbon are in the supply chain. It's not our own production manufacturing processes. We own pure concrete at around 35 to 40 degrees. So it's nowhere near like, the ceramic industry. But gas is still one of our biggest carbon emitters and probably the hardest to move away from. We do solar, we have combined heat and power units and things like that. We do procure, we have 100% REGO contracts on all of our electricity. So we've kind of made those steps already. But yeah, we still, come up against how we're going to offset gas. Particularly hydrogen's just not quite there yet.
So as a business plan, how does it work with you? Are you arguing that don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting any bad faith on your part, but is the main drive for you to adopt sustainability in a business sense, reducing costs or maintaining contracts, as it were?
I'd say both. I mean, yeah, ultimately we get asked a lot from our customer base in terms of, what are you doing? And you have to meet certain goals. The government obviously have set net zero targets for the house building industry. So all these builders that are building new homes now have to make sure within building regulations that they're making homes that are more efficient. So that could be air source heat pumps, could be EV chargers, could be solar on roofs, and then all the embodied carbon of all the bricks, the tile, and everything that goes into making those products have to have a lower embodied carbon. So they're the things that we're working on. And you go back to the original question about how transformational can it be. We've seen that can be quite transformational because their influence over us and our competitors has led to our conversations with the supply chain, like cement suppliers, etc. And we are now seeing, genuine change in the supply chain where lower carbon cement products are being produced. I know I agree some of it can be greenwash, but some of it is definitely within the actual chemical mix and the makeup of those products. So it can be transformational. And like you said, Wayne, I think even within the business, one thing that we've tried to do is get that buy-in, get that internal, anyone who's involved in procurement and the supply chain within our business is kind of bought into this. We need to be more sustainable. So challenging suppliers on, what credentials have we got, what certifications have we got, to make sure that everybody's moving in the same direction to try and, bring those kind of greener products and more sustainable products into the supply chain. But it is equally important that we don't use too much. I've mentioned a few of them there, greener and environmentally friendly. It is too easy to just group things and give things a name without finding out, are they actually low carbon? Are they actually making a difference? And that's where the likes of an EPD come in, environmental product declarations, for those who aren't familiar with those, to map the carbon footprint of the product.
Keep that in mind, because I'll keep that come back to the moment. But Ryan, how does it work with you? Because you're part of going back to Amy, you're part of the ceramic sector, which is a big consumer of energy. So how are you going about bringing sustainability into your business?
We're selling into commercial construction, so it's floor and wall tiles.
Yeah.
Our sustainability policy we launched probably 3-4 years ago, and which I can come back to in a minute, and that didn't get a huge amount of traction. And then the Ukraine invasion happened, and two things happened in ceramics straight away. Gas prices rocketed, and a lot of clays come out of the Donbass region. So a lot of our supply chain had to reconfigure, and it was obvious almost overnight. The big players had resilience built into their business, so they were able to source products from elsewhere. They had long-term contracts on gas pricing, whereas we had smaller suppliers who were offering us things like daily pricing. So straight away, I'm just not going to sell your product then. I can't, because I'm quoting now for something I might win in 18 months. The daily pricing doesn't work for me. So that made us really think about our supply chain and resilience. And that then quite neatly actually overlapped with the bigger players were also often the more sustainable suppliers, because they were able to make the investments in PV, hydrogen fuel kilns, electric kilns, that sort of thing. So that then got us thinking, okay, we've had this sustainability policy for a long time, which was quite generic. Let's sort of focus that down onto a key supplier policy, which is around EPDs, which is around really understanding what those factories are doing about their sustainability. Because again, most of our emissions are in our supply chain. And once we understood all of that, actually then you have a sustainability policy that's got more depth to it, that you can really articulate, that you can actually take a customer to a factory which is spending money on PVs, and you can show it to them, and then you can talk to the person there, and then they'll talk about the lake that they're building, which they're going to fill with water off the mountain, which they'll use to then generate hydrogen. Green hydrogen's going to the kiln. And that was quite transformational for us to actually engage with people doing physical multi-million euro heavy lifting, and then take that and show it to our staff and show it to our customers and say, this is what we are helping you to access. Kind of changed our policy. Went from big.
That's really interesting, because so rather than there's a broad brush, if you go down to the very specifics, that's what.
But then you have a huge training piece, because not everybody in the business is used to being confident around that terminology and talking in that way, embracing that. And I think that's when we, the next step was we employed a sustainability manager, which really helped educate us, but came with a price in that he had an agenda around sustainability that wasn't our own. Then there was a bit of an internal tussle, where you then get back to a kind of happy place where the definition of sustainability works from an environmental point of view and works from an ownership point of view, which was going back to one of the things you said right at the beginning. Was one of my key things around sustainability is about the people in the business, and giving them a sustainable, interesting, long-term career that works for them and works for me as well.
I'll be honest with you as well, but Martin, you've been sort of watching all this stuff. What do you see as, when you're speaking to businesses about selling sustainability as a business imperative rather than a sort of social imperative? No, forgive the terminology, but you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. The bit that I find most interesting is that some of the clients kind of coming aboard in an opportunistic sort of sense, the fact that they can get a free energy assessment, so therefore it's not cost them anything, so why not? I think also the fact that it's kind of government backed thing, it's part of the pilot program, means that when our energy assessors go and talk to companies, we haven't got anything to sell. So there's no additional kind of product that is a kind of,
I almost love that. Yeah.
we happen to have, so there's some of that going on. There is also, in terms of the things that some of the kind of conversations alluding to, which is world's heading in this direction. So if we want to get these contracts in the future, then we're going to have some of this stuff in place, or we've already got it in place. But now what we need to do is move it from, well, we've got a document. The next question, well, great, but how are you going to implement it? What are you actually doing with it? What does this look like on the ground? So with things like energy assessment stuff, you can then start to show there's actual processes here. We are making changes within our processes, our equipment, our building, whatever that may be. The most positive thing about it, from my point of view, is that by and large, energies, it is kind of literally invisible, but most people connect it in the sense that a bill comes in, which means that then goes to finance or accounting, and it just sort of disappears. And the people that have some control over what happens with the energy and how it's consumed don't get to kind of see all of that. It's just purely a finance thing rather than a production thing or an operations thing or a stage thing. So once the businesses actually realise they can control this, because we're kind of removing the invisibility, we're starting to point out what's actually been happening. And you put businesses that have gone through that process, they become quite evangelical, because as business owners, I mean this in the nicest possible way, I'm willing to bet that you're all control freaks. It's your company, you want to make sure it's all doing exactly what you want it to do. And to suddenly have control over something that's invisible, that has just been cost and, oh my God, what we're going to do about this, to actually kind of regain that control and make the invisible visible and understand how it can impact, that really changes the ethos as we've been just kind of discussing, and the sense of kind of autonomy within the company. So they then become, I've heard a number of businesses say, if I'd have known back then what I know now, then I'd have, your support's been great, the grant from the government's been great and everything, but I would have just cracked on and done it. Because we could just made such a difference. And I've heard that on a number of occasions in different types of businesses, print companies, engineering companies, service companies.
I think that's quite key, actually, when you're talking about that, it's actually being able to visualize the data. So that's the whole thing with the energy industry. Everyone's moving towards smart meters, half hourly reads, etc. You put that data in front of someone, you colour code it, i.e. put a heat map on it, and they're like, ding, and they can see themselves there, what our normal looks like, and that bit, that doesn't look normal, so what's gone wrong there? So a lot of the companies that I work with are, a lot of them are kind of SME companies and some larger ones as well. They don't know that you can put these controls in place, that you can put this simple thing called meter operator, data collector, data aggregator agreements that you can put in place. Once you've got those in place, you can go onto a portal, you can see what energy, for what it actually is and what you're actually using. Once you can see that, it just brings it to light. And I think a lot of people don't know that. A lot of the amount of times when I speak to someone, say, have you got a meter operator contract? Have you got a data collector contract? And they're like, what's that?
Yeah.
And it's honestly, it's
crazy. We push for a bit of a really important point there. Absolutely. Stuff is how important is it to have the whole concept of sustainability run through the entire business, because we've talked about getting the DNA rather than having it sort of given to a sustainability officer who sort of sits in a room and so forth. I say this off record, but I'm always deeply suspicious when I speak to a business and I find the sustainability officer is the same as the marketing director. Which says how because it indicates this is how you're approaching it, as it were.
Well, I just want to say something as an SME, and there's a lot of larger companies sat around the table here. But as an SME, I think you've got to be aware of what's happening in your customers are saying and what noises are happening about how things are going to look in the future about procurement and asking about product DNA and all these kind of things. But you've got to look at it as an opportunity, because when we went down the route of sustainability, we went for the King's Award and we were successful last year, but we weren't the first time I went for it. I used it as an audit of our business to see, okay, how far are we off? What have we got in place? What do we need to do better? And this was all about pivoting and putting us in a position where we're more attractive to our customers. So not necessarily yet are we seeing that, price still rules out.
Yeah.
But if you're at a similar price point and you've got these things in place, then that makes you more attractive. And if as an SME, you're starting now to do things that are going to be imposed on you in 5 years' time, you are now have an advantage over your competitors, because you're getting readiness for things that are going to happen. You're doing things that, before you're forced into doing them for the right reasons and for the sustainable and the money saving reasons. But we couldn't have scaled up our business if we didn't go down the sustainability route, because we have not got the footprint to have huge gas tanks for nitrogen. So but we can make it ourselves in a much smaller footprint. And then if we do that, we can upgrade our machinery. So it's not difficult for staff to really relate to that. It's communicated properly that actually sustainability is helping us to grow. Sustainability through the designs, it's not only reducing material, but it's reducing costs. That's making us more competitive. That's opening up these markets. So with all the other things that you're doing around sustainability, you are just putting more weaponry in your arsenal when you're trying to sell your products to customers. You're giving yourself that USP, that differentiation ahead of the curve.
So to pick up your point and your point on how do you cascade that down to really the shop floor in a way, because they're operating a lot of our equipment. We with the energy spike, we really thought it through, because we were doing exactly what you said. The energy bills were coming in. the accounting team are going, oh my God, the energy's going up, but the rest of the organisation will, well, so what? You know, we're carrying on with everything going.
Mhm.
So now, if you come to any of our facilities, every one of our products, we show the kilowatt in the product live.
Mhm.
And we have our 10 top actors, bad actors of products that have got energy intense. And it's just got everybody looking at things through energy as opposed to through, you know, working hours or whatever material waste or scrap. Energy is a massive cost in the business. So that visibility of how do you take a hidden cost and put it into a dumb
Visualize, put it into a
visualize it. I think that's key to a lot of people buying into it all across the whole organisation.
Can I just come, so you mentioned one point about the payback was way quicker than you anticipated. I think you said like a year and a half. Or
18 months.
18 months, yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a similar thing. We looked at costing things up and I was about a 5-year payback, which is reasonable. It was a decent return on investment. But again, it was an enabler to the next step. So it had to happen anyway. But actually, because of what happened with the conflict in Russia and Ukraine, one of them investments actually was like 15, 18 months, it already paid itself back because of the cost per unit went so high. So what we actually did to really engage that is we gave them some money back off their electric bills. All of a sudden, people are very interested then in sustainability and net zero and carbon reduction because it's affecting their lives, it's making their lives better.
What, from their domestic bills?
Yeah, so we gave them that to put to their domestic bills.
Right.
Yeah. Because we made that saving and we were still, you know, making money because we had reduced our costs. So we're able to share some of that benefit with our staff, which obviously improves engagement.
We just on staff, we've just launched a scheme. I've no idea how it'll go, but we're offering all our staff now an electric car through the company.
Mhm.
And part of the deal is they plug back in during the day. And the battery has enough left in it at the end of the shift to take them back and recharge again. So theory is they recharge it over cheap and they give it else at peak. And
That's good.
and they get an electric car for free out of the company effectively through, it's a PLFD thing, but it's not that expensive.
So basically, you've given your workforce mobile batteries to help power the place.
Absolutely. And transport to get in and out of the factory. So, and it's an EV car, the cheap end of the EV market, by the way. But in a way, coming to work and back, you don't need to be in a limousine, do you? You want a functional car.
Electricity costs at home or like.
We're not. So we're saying if you want a company car, we'll give you the car, or we ask you plug it into one of our ports when you go to the factory, and that feeds.
How quickly do those ports work?
Sorry,
Are they superchargers?
they're not the most efficient. Yeah. They were the first generation out of Urban Chain, but they're getting better. They are. The software is definitely getting better as it's been.
Leave them and don't charge to get home and then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a voluntary policy.
Oh, it's absolutely voluntary. Yeah, but the take-up's been so far about 80%. Because you get it. You get the electric car.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah. So anyway, but these are just really interesting things, aren't they? You've got to get that into the workforce, I think, because then they buy into it.
Go on, Martin.
Kind of the opposite side of this bit about, people sort of becoming quite, business owners becoming quite kind of evangelical. So having got control of all of this and sort of putting a number of different types of renewables, whether they're photovoltaics or whether they're heat pumps of various kind of sorts. And again, the heat pumps are a longer payback, but if they become part of the mix, and you're talking about return on investment, I think as people become more sophisticated, you also start to realise that this is actually a compounding effect. So if you put some stuff in to basically help to kind of insulate the building, then you're kind of consuming less energy in the first place. And then if you've kind of gone around and you've repaired all your pneumatic lines and all this sort of stuff, and you're reducing your kind of production waste, then that means that there's less energy kind of required from your renewables. So that means potentially there's more available, sell back to the grid or kind of store for other kind of peak times, whatever. So actually, rather than just doing the return on investment in a linear way, as we kind of get more sophisticated, it would be that kind of holistic sort of view. But coming back to your point, one of the MDs sort of talking to, there was two things. One, has got a small fleet of sort of diesel, so print companies that are delivering stuff to clients and everything. So having got all of this PV kind of screwed to the roof of the place, then one of the questions then is it more cost effective now to actually replace the diesels with electrics? And they'll obviously go away and do those calculations. That has a knock-on impact within, albeit a tiny one, but you can see if it could scale up on the local area, because they're delivering to within X kind of radius in terms of what they're doing. So if we've now got electric vehicles kind of whizzing around that are being powered by local renewables, then in terms of reducing particulates and that local impact, which again is something is highly valuable and can be kind of promoted as a real thing rather than a greenwash, where there's a lot of small businesses are invested in their local community. That's where their workforce is coming from. So they're putting something back. The other final bit was the kind of the opposite of what you're saying, which is, well, if I basically I bring my car in and I charge that during the day, and I can go home and I can basically run my house off of my car. It's a question of whether the technology, because when we had a look at this, I couldn't find too many vehicles that were good enough to be able to store and then actually and then kind of return. I know there's a Ford F-150 pickup truck or something, and there's one or two the Chinese cars that have got that capability, but it is on the way.
Just, all Chinese cars have got that technology.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Does anybody have a spare pen I can borrow? Because mine's run out. I'd like to make a few notes. So, I'm not a spare. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks, Simon.
I mean, how do you go about in your business? Don't take this the wrong way. It's not meant to be backhanded compliments. Spreading the message throughout the workbook rather than being the sustainability officer. Basically, that's a box tick. Thank you very much. Move on.
Yeah, so, well, a few people have mentioned about education and getting buy-in from the workforce. We've just done, I think, in terms of trying to get the message across, particularly to our customers, we've just done a series of training exercises and seminars with our sales team. Because one thing we found was we actually had good internal buy-in, from people in procurement within the business, so managing the supply chain and energy management, and works managers who were looking after the factories to make sure that we're being sustainable, but we weren't getting the message out. So we've just trained all our salespeople on all of that information, given them, a load of information on what we've done as a business and the accreditations we've got to enable them to go out to our customers and actually sell the message, because it's good to do it anyway to reduce your carbon footprint and reduce energy costs within the business. But if you're not talking about it, you're missing out on a key opportunity. Like you mentioned, you could be at the same price as a competitor, but if you're not talking about all the things that you're doing well, then you're potentially missing out on business. So we've done a lot of internal training as well to try and do that. But ultimately it's my job to lead and develop the strategy for sustainability. But we do have the forum to, take that out to different levels of the organisation and make sure that people are.
You deliver that training just to anybody in the company? Is it literally just the sales team? Because I think
so. Recently that's been focused on the sales team, but everybody gets it. Yeah, I mean, even as part of our induction, all the staff have we do an update on this is what we do. This is so when you brought into the door of our business, this is who we are. This is what we do as a business, and we have all we have the accreditations and the certificates again. So it's very much. It's known within the business that's what we try and do. But we're not perfect. There's always more you can do.
Yeah.
I think it is a constant journey, and people leave and new people come into businesses. It's interesting because some people come in with perhaps work somewhere else and they're really into the sustainability agenda, but then equally we have challenges. We have people who've worked in the industry for a long time before it was such a big topic, and we have people that have been hard to change hearts and minds because they're focused on to make as many tiles as we can today, or and then those things are difficult, but it's important because ultimately you're in business to make money as well. You can't survive if you're not making profit. So you have to balance those things, but we've managed to integrate it throughout the business.
Training is really important, I think, in the workforce.
Yeah.
So spread the message far and wide.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we're looking at doing more of, and I know it's a bit later on, you mentioned it, but we work with a company called Planet Mark. I don't know if anyone else has heard of them or works with them, but they certify our carbon footprint that we issue each year, and so they give us an external certification of that. And as part of what we pay for them to do that service for us, they do what's called sustainability energizers. So they're workshops with you send staff on and they'll bring someone in and yeah, good workshopping, just kind of round table like this, talking about, okay, well, it's someone external, so it's not influenced by management or anybody else, but they come in and they'll talk to members of the staff and they'll either do it on Teams or Zoom call or whatever, but they'll say, just take your job in a day-to-day basis. What else could you do, whether it's waste recycling or it's energy saving or water saving, anything like that, what else can you do? And it gets people thinking and talking, and they do quite often then, they'll come back to work or, they'll go back to their line manager and say, oh, we talked about this and we've got some ideas, and not everything's viable, everyone, so a lot of people, you get a lot of good ideas because everyone's got an opinion, which is great. We find that because it's so topical, it's in the news all the time. Everyone wants to talk about EV chargers and pros and cons of electric cars and whether they're really good for the planet or not. And that people have different opinions, but ultimately you get good buy-in and good conversation starting, and that's half the battle. So
And you know what you saying, spreading even just, not even just, yeah, almost closely confusing almost the workforce and does actually pay benefits.
It's very difficult because I think going back to what I said earlier about the fact that you need sort of a churn in staff and bring staff in who are a bit more sort of savvy over these things. We've got a team of about 12 that have been with us for average about 15 years. So to get them to change, it's not going to be terribly easy. To get them interested isn't going to be particularly easy because all their concern is the paycheck at the end of the day and coming in and going home. And that's something that I'm hoping to take away from today. Really, to survive, and how we probably can make it a little bit more sustainability, get the message across better. But when you're dealing with a different generation, it's not that easy.
Well, I'd just like to say that, I mean, that I would imagine most companies involved have got a large kind of production workforce and manufacturing base that is pretty standard, that people are there to earn money and pay their bills. I mean, that's normal. But when it comes down to opinions and beliefs, you can change those opinions. Well, you can almost make them opinions and beliefs not matter by focusing on the bottom line, because sustainability matters, what we're talking about. If you can demonstrate that it's adding revenue back into the business, that's creating opportunity for everybody. All of a sudden, those opinions and beliefs are not part of the conversation. So I had one person in my workforce say to me, "Oh, we've done all of this, but no, it's all nonsense. Donald Trump's coming in, he's going to do this, he's going to do that." Well, Donald Trump's in America. We're doing what we're doing for our business, and we're saving money in our business with what we're doing in sustainable. So it doesn't really then, that argument's gone.
Our difficulty is we're in a kind of a little bit of a weird position. So we're part of a multinational business which have different cultures. Obviously, you've got US based, and you've got and then we're also the conduit in between this kind of huge coal-fired power industry, which is outside. Then the second versus the cement industry, whatever. And Nigel, I was coming in here and I was saying, well, Nigel's been doing sustainability before it was invented. We've been taking the byproducts, which were an inevitable result of this industry, which obviously caused an awful lot of emission. It's all done and it's out there in the atmosphere. Around the world, obviously, that's still going on. And as a country, I think talking about conversations and people are talking about it in their day-to-day life. People talk about energy recycling, sustainability in the home. So it's not hard conversations to have in the workplace. And I think by natural, I mean we're only a small business in Ireland, a huge business. So it's easy for us to have a conversation without it. It's like having a conversation on this table, pretty much. But then the product that we produce from this is then going in and making a massive difference in the sort of cement and concrete industry in terms of reducing emissions down there. So it's actually what we're producing is a really great thing, and is increase in demand because of up your supply chain. Yeah. You're going to the cement industry and saying, what are you doing? What products can you incorporate as raw material? But we've got an investment up at the Tractor Power Station of £40 million to build a new factory. So we're going to go from 16 sort of more distribution and sales and products and subordination to manufacturing from obviously all the coal-fired power stations are gone, and there's all these legacy stockpiles left over from that industry. So we're going to take those and we're going to process them. We're going to have a factory that applies energy. Now we're dealing with a capital, so they're not directly employed by us, although we're talking about our business. But they're reporting to the centre, and they've got so there's a capital projects team to build this factory. They go, well, using gas is going to be quicker to get this factory up and running. And you're like, so it's how to influence the people in your business, which are not your employee. Ultimately, you can't tell you it's your team. But then it's when you've got others in the wider business, which are coming from different cultural backgrounds. So, well, that might be all right in the States to just go, yeah, we'll put in a new gas pipeline in, burn it and crack on.
Yeah.
But over here, we're like, well, look, we're on site at Tractor Power Station. They've got all their biomass, going carbon negative, carbon capture, all their journey. We can't just then start putting gas. We start like drying this material with gas, and it's like nobody's listening. So we get that frustration internally. So I think we've got more, not necessarily. I think the team are absolutely fine. They're all on board. They love what they do. There's not a great deal that they can kind of influence apart from. I mean, they naturally don't want to waste. They're not wasteful. And I think they're all on the right page, but I think it's the parts of it.
That's fair. I'd be interested, certainly to hear from the table, because a geopolitical argument, which we get involved in quite a lot, is I'm sure you're aware that the UK produces about 1%, just slightly 1% of the world's emissions. You compare it with India, China, the States, Russia, it's nothing. And then I often get that thrown at me. We're supposed to do our bit, but at the end of the day, we haven't got a right to turn around, particularly to you in China, and say should be doing it because they're going through the same industrialization process that we went through in the 40s and 50s. And it's an interesting debate. That.
I think I'm right with this. But how do you actually go about this? I'd say this is something I don't believe, but to provoke a response. That sustainability is yesterday's agenda, as it were. And how do you actually keep momentum going? I say this to provoke a response.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting question. I understand what you're saying there. So one of the things that I find is that we'll come up with an initiative. So our definition of sustainability is much broader. So we want to give back. Part of our definition is to give back to the architects and designers. So we'll come up with an initiative that does that, whether that's taking people through an underprivileged background and allowing them to access architecture training to get into that career path, which is something it's a very restricted path to get into. Well, we'll do that. Works really well. My team will get bored of that really quickly. Oh, are we still doing that? Shouldn't we be doing something else? Or someone else will come up with another idea. And I think that's the hard thing, is actually to come up with these ideas that work, that you can keep consistently engaging with and that make a difference, and doing that sort of consistency thing. So that's where, so the Build Away program, which we're part of, we've now been doing that for 4 years. I think we're better for having done that for 4 years than rather sort of zigzag between various other things that have come our way all the time. But actually, I have found that keeping the team engaged, keeping the sales team engaged, we're actually going out there and talking about what we're doing. That's quite a hard thing to sell a product on price or technical characteristic is one thing. I'm not saying that's an easy thing. That's one thing. To sell a product based on the values of your business and how you differentiate yourself from a sustainability perspective. So that is a level of salespersonship above that. And so finding those right people who stay engaged with that. It all comes back to sort of constant training, constant re-education. And what I've learned probably in the last 18 months, so having been guilty from well, that's a great idea to do that. We'll put our money over there. This sort of consistency thing as well. This consistent message with your own team, with your market. I think that gets away from that your point there, the sustainability place of is last year's issue. Last year's problem. Just keep going, make it really part of your business. And we're seeing now, 3 years after doing that, the benefits of that coming through. And I'll give you a great example of this. So we're on a contract with a large automotive company in the West Midlands, where their policy is to dual source everything. I've been on that contract now for 18 months, single source, because the other bidders have not been able to meet all the requirements from a sustainability point of view. So then I won't stay single sourced on that, but my other two competitors are trying to catch up. Yet we're in a place where we had all that documentation ready to go, certifications in place. We weren't afraid of the said exporter. We were already a member of that. So that effectively had 18 months of sole supply because we were prepped for it.
That's a really good point, because it's linked to how important is it to have not just the policy, the belief, the savings, but the paperwork, the accreditations, the B Corp, and so forth, that says you can show to the external world, we're not just talking about this, we are the real thing.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it takes a lot of work as well, with an internal team to keep those and the audit process of the internal auditing, as well as the external auditing. But yeah, we do find similar, there are contracts that we in and hold on the basis of our credentials. So it definitely helps, it definitely is important. We do unfortunately see, even now in our industry, we will see that sometimes price unfortunately talks, depending on the customer. Some entrants to the market will come in with cheaper products and not the same credentials, and they'll still pick up work, in some sectors of the market. But generally, when the clients you want to deal with, where you can command a higher price, better margins, better adherence of the work, dealing with better clients on big projects, it's a key driver and it's important. And hence why we've done, these seminars over the last 12 months or so, and continue to do it again. Like I said, the message of just keeping that going, making sure it's constantly there, which helps with people's understanding as well. If you just mention it once a year or every couple of years, you give everybody a big seminar on sustainability and they're not used to selling on those points, they just can't take it all in. It's too much. They're kind of trying to remember all these stats and, these accreditations that the business holds, and all of a sudden it becomes something they're scared of rather than something that actually they're confident in talking about in front of the client. So yeah, I think it's really helped our business.
When was it? Sorry.
Our industry has been plagued by concepts of value engineering for the last sort of 10 years or so, which is price chipping, isn't it? It's just procurement come in and then just try and chip on the price. The decision's already been made, and to jump through all these hoops again. What we found is with value engineering, it's all about price, but now actually you've got to hit a carbon footprint threshold as well on an EPD. Yeah, that does make your product a lot more sticky. So it does make that value engineering point a lot harder, but still, I think primarily cost outweighs sustainability. But I do see that slowly but surely shifting.
For you, how important is it that having a King's Award? I mean, apart from the sort of nice warm glow it gives you, what's the business benefit of that?
Well, the business benefit is it gives you a platform and it gives you a differentiation from your competition. So if you've got a King's Award, that is a seal of approval that you are doing things right from a sustainability point of view. So from my perspective, like I said, initially we went out to audit the business, make sure we've got the right infrastructure. But now we've got that award, I have to, as managing director of my workforce, we have to use that as a tool. We have to use that as a platform and to align ourselves with the right customers. Some of the talk here is about the customers, maybe they're not the right kind of customers for us. If that's what our differentiation is, then maybe we need to align ourselves more with customers of that mindset. I'm certainly looking actively to do that within our markets. I mean, it's easier for me to say because we're an SME and, there's more opportunity out there for us. But for me, I think it's aligning yourself with the customers. And it's also, I keep on coming back to this adding value, but I can think of one product which was just a standard product. We made a slight bit of change to the reinforcing, took the same strength. We took out 14 tons of steel over the year on just one product. Obviously, it's a big carbon. I think it depends whether you get room conversion factors or whatever, but it's between 2.6 and 3.9, whatever you want to use, of carbon per ton of steel. So we took that out of the equation, but we've reduced the cost. So again, that kind of nullifies the argument because the price point is cheaper. we're making our own nitrogen, so we're not having to procure that. We're making it from PV, so it's not costing as much money. We reduce material costs. So we're becoming more competitive so why sustainability important as it? We're becoming more competitive. And we've got this added, like I said, I use the word weaponry, but that's what it is. You've got more ammunition to present to your customers to differentiate you from your competition. So that's what I would say.
I'm very Martin, very well on this, but one thing I'd like to is what support there is from government, and perhaps you as well, Amy, on this. I mean, I think you rightly said, no, actually, what you mostly said, a lot of businesses, had they known previously, they'd have gone ahead and done it anyway, just because of the benefits. But how much support is there from the government? Or is it, again, it's the sort of thing which is sort of fading because it's not on the top of the agenda?
No, it's definitely part of the agenda. The just some background. What we're actually running here is a pilot program, and the reason that's happening is so that the government can actually understand how better to support small businesses in actually reducing their energy consumption in decarbonising. So there just wasn't that much information out there at a kind of a ground level. There's some theoretical stuff going on, but there wasn't a kind of, well, what actually makes a difference? What types of recommendations are what's effective? What's more helpful? What are the issues for different industry sectors, some of which use more energy than others? And it's the pilot program is focused in the West Midlands because it's just basically got a good cross section of different industry sectors. There's a reasonable amount of manufacturing, there's a good amount of services, there's retail stuff kind of going on. So that became a good kind of platform. And the intention is that the findings from the pilot program will inform policy, and that will actually turn into a national program. The time frame for rolling that out is to be decided, but that's the reason why this is happening, so the government can actually take some informed decisions and move that forward at a national level. We're starting here within the West Midlands, but we're already in conversations with the combined authority about what do we think the next phase will look like. So it's very serious in that you've got there's some very big, scary we've got these net zero by 2030 and 2050 kind of things, and you've got to do that at all levels: domestic, vehicles, transport, business, the whole bit. So we're doing a bit with business, and we're specifically doing it with small businesses, which are basically 96% of all the businesses in the UK. So they're not as big an employer ultimately as the large businesses, and they've got their own separate sets of systems. So at the moment, I guess the kind of carrot on the stick is that there is free energy assessment, and the grant funding is kind of up to 100,000, and all kind of 50% of what it is being put in terms of the recommendations. That's to encourage businesses to get involved, so that does actually have an ongoing impact in reducing carbon. But it also means that once the businesses are involved, then they can be monitored, and we can kind of see, again, there's been mention of portals. We've set one up for the programme here, so that we can actually kind of capture the information for the different recommendations, what the kind of costs are across all the sort of sectors, so that we can actually start to get some sensible numbers on the viewpoint of what sectors are truly kind of energy intensive. There's different types of energy intensity. There's a number of sectors where they don't use anywhere near as much as energy as some of you guys might do, but the cost of the energy relative to their turnover is really quite high. So if you've got somewhere like a pub or a restaurant, whatever, their actual energy consumption per kind of square metre is actually really high. They're not very big buildings, but there's a lot going on. The lights are constantly got to be on, fridges, freezers, pumps, all that sort of stuff. Care homes, you can't just turn the heating down because the energy's gone up. When you've got a bunch of people that are critically kind of like needing your support, it's got to stay on. So that additional, that cost to them is really important. And, you know, we get good traction in some of those areas that aren't as high margin, so don't have that leeway. For me, one of the key words that's been mentioned within the conversation from a number of different people is that word resilience. How are you going to kind of keep going moving forward? There's currently within what we're doing at the moment, there is direct kind of grant support. There are other government grants in terms of if you're looking for electric vehicles, things like that, you can kind of get support in terms of putting in charging stations, that kind of thing. And then depending on the energy levels you're consuming, there are separate programs already in place to try and encourage very large energy users through things like climate change levy schemes, stuff like that, to kind of get rebates and help to offset some of those costs. One of the things that wasn't mentioned but is part of that, you know, why would we bother? We're only doing kind of 1%. A number of the businesses that we've talked to compete internationally. Problem for them is that the UK has literally got the highest business energy prices in the world. They're competing against what they effectively see as subsidised energy costs from a number of different countries. So if they're going to be competitive, then reducing and managing the cost of that energy is actually really important to them. And if we're going to win a long-term argument, saying that we're doing it rather than, as you rightly say, well, yeah, but you got there because you had the glory years when you were just cheap energy and burning this, that, and the other stuff. But it will get to a point where they'll look at us, even though we are the 1% ago. Actually, they're starting to do really well now. So even if, you know, the other country's 40% something, they're not going to just ignore that. They're obviously going to adopt it for themselves to become more competitive.
Anyway, because I've knows you, I'm very aware of time, so ceramics industry is particularly hammered, particularly because of energy costs. It can't compete against the Middle East and Southeast Asia. So how important is it on that basis?
Definitely getting the chance of government support on it. Important. Making sure that there's support on energy price while also the industry's looking at transformational change in terms of how it operates or processes, things that we see in our ceramic pilot facility. You know, different process changes, converting gas to hydrogen, for example, which we've done, and making sure that people can test out those new processes as well, because some of the processes that we've been looking at that might have a shorter time to create your product or have the potential to be a lower energy system, you might get material improvements as well, which goes back to it's not just about being sustainable. You can sell a product that has a better ceramic microstructure and then it has the added benefit that it might be a faster process or it might be slightly more sustainable. Having that sustainability as an addition is also really valuable.
So the idea of sustainable is actually driving innovation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think also it's the crisis of the cost of energy. So it's almost like if you're an animal, you know, to survive or adapt. You know, take away all of the grass out of the field and just, you know, you've got to like adapt. So the governments have got to really look at the critical sectors, particularly issues, foundation issues. They're critical for a reason, we need them for our whole society. Is to say, well, okay, well, we're going to look at these high challenging energy costs. So therefore, business will adapt. Well, it's going to die potentially first before it can adapt. So it's just that really needs looking at. Maybe that's industry planning to get the points cost to government to do.
It needs that
Focus on something else. Yeah, I think that's quite heavily massive capex projects, research projects. You know, Now, where's that money going to come from? I think that when you part, we're a small business, but when you go for some fund research project, and they go, you're not really an SME, are you? Because you're owned by, this huge company.
And those funds go so.
Yeah. So I think whole of the industry needs to be supported, not just. Seems to be a lot of firms just go, well, we'll send them to all the small businesses. That's great. We need, we need small businesses. We need businesses to grow, but then we need those major industrial companies to survive as well. Otherwise, we will.
But I'm right in saying that there's government funding or support for you're probably.
Yeah, we get rebates on the
Depending on how much energy you use based on your.
Yeah, you get an EEI rebate scheme for high energy. I think some qualifications from that side, but it's worth looking at.
But then there's not a justification to reduce your energy. Because
Well, there is, believe me, there is. It's only a tiny proportion
Yeah.
rebate.
So it's not conditional on a certain percentage of your amount of energy you consume.
No, it's not. It's a straightforward formula on high energy use and impact. So it's a rebate, but it doesn't solve. It helps, but it doesn't solve the fundamental problem. Well, our fundamental problem actually is in electricity. We've got a plan for that. It's gas. Yeah, gas is the killer. In our business anyway. It's not necessarily the electricity. We can put voltage optimization for all the Internet of Things around all the kit and make sure it's optimized. Gas just sits there and it's hard to replace.
The other issue with the electricity, which a lot of companies I know locally in the Telford and Wrekin area in particular, they want to do new projects, but they can't because there's not resilience yet in the grid, so they can't get permission to put that extra.
It's a real
And
challenge.
that is probably one of the bigger.
DNO is the biggest issue, I'd say, is basic energy. It's the biggest
See that?
issue to moving forward on innovation.
Okay, you're saying.
I'm just saying, I see a lot of issues in. So if you've got solar or something like that and you want to export it to the grid, the infrastructure is just not there to be able to support it, to be able to take, the grid can't take it basically because we don't have all the distribution and transmission cables, etc. in place. And so the amount of times where I come up against it and you go to your, distribution network officer or this, and they're like, yeah, that's great, but we can't connect you to the grid. Like you have to keep it.
Years, 12 years. The reason it's called TNO in our team's opinion is the last 2 words of that.
Yeah.
Right,
The answer's been.
Yeah.
right. I'm going to call a halt there because I did promise to finish on time and I've failed miserably. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Good, thank you. If so, what I'll do is I'll probably write this up early next week and I'll circulate it if that's okay. I can't do prior approval because I can't get anything else, but it's going online. Could you do me a favour? You said you've got the a web link or something halfway through.
In terms of working for,
I can't remember. You did say so. You mentioned stuff, so there's a great portal or something.
oh, sorry, we've developed a portal as part of the program so that we can basically kind of capture all the information from all the businesses that we support, so that information then feeds into part of Green Security Net Zero. We're paying for part of the program, so they actually understand at a policy level what is working, what they want to kind of do more of, help them to make decisions on how they can help small businesses.
But what I'll do is I'll send a quick email around afterwards because one or two people said, can we swap email addresses? Technically, I've got to ask you the GDPR rules and take it. Nobody's got any objections, have you? Brilliant. Do that.
Yeah,
I'll send that one.
that'd be great.
We might be getting a few notes.
Well, I must get that. So which one's going to be as many notes as you?
Sorry, I'm one for scribbling notes.
Thank you very much, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think swap business cards, grab many unused croissants and cakes before we go. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you all for coming and taking part. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, the message is trying to get your
recycling.
Trying to get over the planning burden for getting cars charged at the opposite.
That.
Oh, we're.
That is an absolute